All right, guys. We're going to start with our next unit. This unit is called Major Issues of the Civil War. Now, this is a two-part unit. This one's going to be the shorter part. We're only going to have three real slides to focus on. Tomorrow, we're going to look we're going to look at six slides. So these first three, we're really going to be talking about some of the major figures and philosophies and major events that occurred that led up to Civil War. Tomorrow, we're going to look at what key issues. There's two key issues we're going to talk about. One is more states' rights. The other one is slavery and how the different parts of America, the three sections, felt about each issue. Today, on the other hand, we're going to be looking at some of the major issues, some of these really big concepts that drove America to the Civil War. So let's dive in and look at the first one. So the first is issue of states' rights. Now, what is states' rights? Basically, states' rights is this. I'm a state, right? I'm sitting, chilling in my home capital of Austin, and the government says, you know what? We're gonna tax everyone who says y'all. And I'm sitting in Austin and says, forget that. I'm not paying those taxes. I'm my own state. I declare that unconstitutional. I'm not paying your taxes. States' rights, to a degree, is a state deciding what's best for itself and then acting accordingly to try to correct what it sees as falsity in the federal government. So this is really tested. The first time it's tested the nullification crisis. And remember from about 2 days ago, the nullification crisis revolves all around the ability of states to declare a law unconstitutional. Remember the law I was talking about? This federal government's making a law to tax everyone who says y'all. I'm sitting in Austin. I don't like that because I say y'all a lot. So me being my country self, we're gonna, stand up and say, "Hey, stop it." But this didn't go well for the first person who tried it. And in 1828, with the Tariff of Abominations, ugh, bad pronunciation, the Tariff of Abominations was passed, and this really upset the South. Remember, the South was all about getting goods and sending goods through its ports to other nations. So this really upset John C. Calhoun is from South Carolina. South Carolina had some of the best ports in the South, and it was destined to lose a ton of money. And as we know, everything revolves around the money. So it decided to declare the Tariff of Abominations. Um, they're not going to follow it. They're going to declare it just being gone from their state. So what happened was the president at the time, who wasn't very friendly, his name is Jackson, like we learned about earlier. He said, "Who is this? My vice president's going to say I can't tax state. I'm going to tax the state if I want to tax the state." So he marched down there with his forces, and he's going to make sure that he hangs everyone who's responsible for the problem. Now, who jumped in right in the middle was Henry Clay. Remember, our great compromiser. He's like, "Calm down, whoa, 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 now. We need to prevent this." So Henry Clay creates a compromise, of course, as historians always love to flowery date to create all these wonderful names, the Compromise Tariff of 1833. And basically, it allows the government to lower taxes, and the government backs down, but South Carolina has to respect the rights of the federal government to declare laws. And this issue comes back up less than 30 years, or a little more than 30 years later, with the Civil War. Southern states thought they had the right to secede. They thought that the federal government wasn't protecting their rights. And because the federal government wasn't protecting the Southern rights, it's our right that we end this confederation and we create our own. And this leads to a whole mess ton of problems that we'll get to next week when we actually talk about the Civil War. Now we actually get to a next part, one of the fun new additions I'm making to our PowerPoints, and it's question time. So what I have here on the screen for you is a hilarious cat, by the way. Sorry, I love to mess with cat pictures. But it is question time. And what question time is I'm going to take a second, and I want the teacher to pause the video. Okay, hopefully the teacher went over some of these questions with you and you had a chance to discuss them. Now let's move on. Now let's look at Dred Scott versus Stanford. Sorry, Dred Scott versus Sanford. Whew. Bad pronunciation tonight, guys. I apologize. Basically, this denied citizenship to enslaved people. Before this point, remember, America was divided. You had free states in the north, slave states in the south. But this Supreme Court case declared that all enslaved people were considered property, so there was no free state. And it basically made the Missouri Compromise unconstitutional because it limited the access, or it limited areas allowed for slavery. Because it limited areas allowed for slavery, it was unconstitutional because slaves were property, what it said. And because slaves were property, there were no free states. So what happened was the South really favored this decision. Think about it. The South got the largest court in the land. They backed them up. The South was like, yeah, someone finally believes in us. The federal government's doing something right. They believe our decision because we're right. But the North did not. The North thought that this was just going to lead to more problems. They thought the judges were just trying to make an easy decision to really stop conflict from happening. But what really happened was it caused some really intense conflict between the North and the South. But more importantly, this decision really affected the lives of enslaved people. Because think about it. If you're an enslaved person and you're working down in Georgia or down in Florida or in Texas, there's always that possibility for you. You have that goal of being able to escape, being able to go to the North, and being a freedman. Actually getting your rights that were guaranteed you in the Constitution that was created less than 100 years ago. But with this court case, it really brought a lot of devastation to these people because they realized there's no way that I can be freed unless through some extreme action. And that action is going to occur during the Civil War. Basically, Congress said this: neither slave nor indentured servitude, except as a punishment for a crime whereof the parties shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the U.S. or any place subject to their jurisdiction. And this, it sounds contrary to Dred Scott case, which it was, because eventually the Congress will respond to this by declaring the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, which after the Civil War they will say that no one can be a slave because it's against our Constitution. And like it says, the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. If it's against the Constitution, which Congress said, and which will be decision after the Civil War, then it can be done nowhere. So right after the Civil War, right after this event, we're going to see that the decision is flipped. Dred Scott versus Stanford is going to become old news right after the Civil War, and we're going to see that freedom is due for these enslaved people. Okay, so we got another question time for you. So I'm going to have the teacher pause this video, and then he or she will go over these questions with you. All right, so I'm back. Let's go ahead and keep on moving. And last guy we're going to talk about this guy with a fantastic beard. I mean, pretty awesome, don't you think? Got whiskers down here on the bottom all squiggling saying, how do you do? Let's talk about civil disobedience. Civil disobedience is one of the main concepts. It doesn't really get developed in the Civil War because it's been happening long before. But civil disobedience is used by abolitionists. And it's used because it's really effective. And what we'll see is that future civil rights leaders will use this similar method of protest. Now, where does this all start in America? This guy I see right down here on the bottom, Captain Whiskers. His name is Henry David Thoreau. And he refused to pay taxes. He refused to pay taxes because he didn't want to support a government that allowed slavery, and in fact allowed a country to fight a war with Mexico. He thought that if he was paying his taxes into this government, then he's approving what the government does. Because he doesn't approve what the government does, he's not paying taxes. Honestly, it's a really good thing he's not around today because, you know, our government loves its taxes, and if you don't pay them, someone's going to be knocking on your door real quickly to get them out of you. But I digress. Thoreau stated, the government continued to permit injustice by fighting wars and permitting slavery. And as long as the government does this, I will refuse to pay taxes because I don't support a government that does unjust things. And to respond, to get all of his thoughts in one place so that people can understand his position, he wrote an essay titled Civil Disobedience. He didn't want people to break the laws indiscriminately. He didn't want people just to go out and start having anarchy, go out, kill whenever you want, take whatever you want, go out and tag whatever you want. He didn't want that. He urged people to challenge laws that were considered unjust, that were considered morally wrong. And he said to do this by refusing to obey them. And many people followed him, most notably is Martin Luther King Jr., who used civil disobedience in the 60s to bring civil rights. And the same success that we saw slowly with the abolitionists will be mimicked in the 60s. Because as we all know, civil rights isn't completed. We don't have a perfect world where everyone's in harmony. There's still work to be done. And that's a responsibility of us, all the young people of America. We have to take the next step. We have to refuse to obey laws that are considered unjust, and we have to fight for what we believe in. All right, so it leads us to another one of our fun new things. Question time. Again, I'm gonna let your teacher read you the question, and I'll be back with you in a moment. All right, so let's wrap this up. Lastly, we need independent practice. This was a really short mini lesson today. I understand. Tomorrow will be a bit longer. We have about 6 slides to go through, and we're going to look at how states' rights and how slavery was, or how tariffs and state rights and how slavery was viewed in both the North, or in 3 places: the North, the South, and the West. We're going to touch on that tomorrow. But today, I really want you to get an insight into what we're talking about so I can go into more depth tomorrow. So what I want you to do is we're going to go to your Learning with Graphic Organizers. I apologize, I don't have the page up here for independent practice. However, your teacher will tell you what page number in class. I apologize, I made a mistake, but I promise you these are the correct section titles. What you're going to work on today is the sections titled Sectionalism, States' Rights, and Issue of Slavery. Again, the teacher in the class will give you the correct page number. I apologize. What I want you all to do, though, is make sure you pay close attention to these. You may not understand all the concepts, but I want you to get some basic understanding of what states' rights and the issue of slavery was, and how the North, South, and the West felt about it, because I'm going to dive in. This is a really interesting concept that we're going to look at in depth tomorrow. All right, as always, if you missed any of these topics, the teacher has a PowerPoint that he'll go over with you. Be sure to ask questions in our question time. This will be a continuing concept that we're going to have throughout the presentations. So not only are you going to answer the questions in question time, but if you have any questions with the teacher, please ask. We're here to help you. All right? All right, I'll see y'all tomorrow.